This week's channeled message from the angels is challenging all of our learned wisdom about how we are supposed to learn and grow, about how we're supposed to process our experience of being human. So, welcome back to my channel, you guys. I am thrilled to have you here for this one. And for those of you who are new, my name is Ann Tucker. I'm a trance channel. I channel from the angelic realm, and I do that by raising my awareness as high as I can go. I go a little bit higher. I connect at the angelic realm, and then information, healing, and messages come through that I share here with you guys on YouTube. And my process is I usually channel the day before, and I do that. The angels speak through my voice. I speak out loud, and then I use Dragon software to transcribe it. I go in, I put in the periods, break apart the paragraphs, and then I share it here by reading the message with you, usually the day after. Today, I'm actually on a trip. I'm down in Los Angeles, so I'm recording this in advance just to make sure I have a message for you guys on Friday. So I channeled a message yesterday, and I thought, oh boy, because this one feels kind of scandalous for me. It really does, especially coming from like my experience of life has been to be in my head. You know what I mean? I come from a family that values intellect and this really throws all of it on its head. And I think one of the things that makes it challenging is that the ways we have been taught to learn about ourselves, the ways that we've been taught to understand our experience, they're questioning all of it. And I really had to sit with this and think about it. But the more I think about it, the more I think they're right. So yeah, I'm just going to have to share it with you guys, and then you guys can see how you feel about it. So, all right. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and dig in. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who are still interested, we've had several people come and join us in Soul Convergence. If you still want to do Soul Convergence, which is my intensive 11-week healing program, it is a prerequisite for the summer program, which is a program to activate your gifts. And in order to be ready for the summer program, you would have to start Soul Convergence like right away within the next week. So if you want to do it, it's not too late. Just go to my website, anntucker.com/soul-convergence. And you can sign up. The program is already underway, but you can just sign up using the recordings. It will be self-led, and you will make it done in time. You'll be done in time to join us for the summer. So that's there for you if you are feeling called to do it. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the message. Here is what they say. They say, blessings. We are as one being, all as one, in one concern for humanity and the form and shape of its arrival. We wish to bring to you now thoughts of our concern for where you're from, for the new beginnings, for what is changing from within you. You are rife, abound with the treasures of your own speaking, of what is words put into motion. You abound with the treasures of creating, with what is happening between the words. Your mind, it spins thoughts from memories. The rubble of this consecrated moment is found a transference from the past. Woes from long ago become certain and rise again. We speak unto you now of the thought you perform, of the words that are made, of the interplay and exchange between yourself and all that is said. What does concern us now is the leakage of a certain time frame of memory which permeates yourself, the time frame of what was just before, the memories of a certain time and stance of operating which stays within the body far too long. There is an existence within yourself where you are living half step behind the current now, where you live within the envelope of what was just before now. The thoughts, the preamble, the foreshadowing, the moment ago, all entangled into one voice. The leakage of what was permeates the now and leads into the foreground, the comparison of which is held in consternation against the current circumstances. We wish for you to acknowledge within yourself the degree to which you linger in the time that just was. How much of the advancement of your knowing is held within that time frame. To become aware of the self and how the aspect to be in the aspect to be has been curated to linger in what was before. We wish for yourself an announcement to be made from within your heart, within the structure of your very being, a new method and way of living, to advance the self forward, projecting from the now forward, not behind. It is as though the self takes a stance of difference, as though the self is currently lingering languidly backward, laying upon the remains of the time that just was, leaning back against the happenings and letting them pull through into the now and what comes through you. We wish for the self to divest from what was, to separate the self from the experience just before, to let it move into view, to assume the rationale of one who can experience and let go of what is happening, can let it pass through you, can take on no umbrage, no residual lack of understanding, no curiosity for the unknown, to let it be, to let it move freely through and from you, to lean into the new now and the next beyond moment, a half step forward, anchoring your mind into the wave of the oncoming and the ongoing, into the next now, letting the self stay a half-step endowment upon the crescent of the wave, just off the shore of your next creation. To feel the self ambulating forward as though you are endowed with the presence of mind to perceive the new, an enchantment waiting, that you may simply be, to encourage and experience the new now to come forward. The template of your offering, of your way of being, has been to linger, to last beyond the now, to stay within the time frame of the just was, to stay there. A lengthy parameter engages you now as though the mind is scattered among the remains of the new day that just was, taking apart and remembering each time frame and moment as though distilled once, it will separate new meaning, as though you can find yourself in between the moments of digestion of the time that is past. We say you cannot now or ever find yourself there. You are made of stardust, and starlight waits for no one. Starlight shines its brightest upon the new morn. It makes its presence known and dissipates instantly. Its shades are brighter upon first perception. This is what you are. The instant of your own happening is most powerfully known by living in the present moment where you are, by letting the self be leaning inward, forward, and through to the new now, the next now. In this habitude worth forming, you will discover what you are in new ways. You will see the endowment of the times as forming around yourself, dignifying your gentler properties, examining yourself in the tundra of experience as though you are painting yourself into form, creating within the field of observation and experience, and seeing this is the canvas upon which you can draw conclusions, not to the practice of resuscitating what was, and enduring an endless tirade of thoughtful concern about how you have been, what was said, and has passed through your mind, as though all can be discovered through greater analysis. Greater depth of meaning can be found after. It cannot be but the re-understanding of an understanding that was made in the moment of time of experience. We say you have been trained and thought of as being a species who must reflect, ponder, re-understand themselves through the action of redetermination posthumously to every moment and encounter, as though the day must pass not twice, but 5 times through your mind for better understanding. We say that you cannot but endow the time spent with more riddles of understanding from the perspective of who you were then, letting yourself dawdle in a time frame that just was. There is no understanding to be had that cannot be gleaned much better in the new now. All that presents itself upon the crescent of the wave that is coming is fresh to be revealed. It is the new and next instantiation of what you are. What you have been recedes into the background, into the beyond measures of comprehending, and you become something new. This instantiation is being revealed before you now, to be revealed to yourself in a time frame of momentary pleasure, moment upon moment. In the understanding of what is revealed, you find yourself played out more clear, with more rightful attunement than any processing you can do later. Thus, we urgently advise you to reconsider the template which has been ingrained societally, educationally, and in all aspects of human culture. That to take on an aspect of residual contemplation of where you've been perpetuates into the new now what was, and prevents yourself from the growth that can be captured in the moment, in the next now, to which you are enabled. You cannot now understand the full limits of your capacity if you dawdle in what is past. You cannot now field your comprehension into the uncertainty of your own growth if you exhaust yourself with the conundrums and puzzles of what was before. There, the circumstances have lapsed. The time frames have closed. All that was is no longer. It is as though you dust the roses that have died, trying to find their bloom again. We take you by the hand and lead you gently to the surface of reveal, where you are understood. It is at the closure of the mind to open again, to find the light of the day and dawn, and reveal what is before you. To surf the edge, drawn into form, to see yourself painted a picture, to see what you are brought into form, as though it were from within you. This great digestion of material takes place in the present and nowhere else. You must be in this aspect to oneself to grow to your greatest purchase on this earth. Yeah. So, like this message, I tell you, when I first got it, I'm like, no way. Like, no way. Like, really? Like, think about that. We are taught to reflect. We are taught to go back and think through it in every aspect. Like we talk about, like, okay, you have an experience. Let's pause. Let's reflect. Let's in business. You're taught like, okay, do a thing and then go back and take it apart and analyze and look at how it went. And we're taught to live and in think if we want to learn something, we're taught that we need to go through it, like have the experience and then go back and digest the experience somewhere else. And I have always accepted that as being like the inalienable truth because it's true. Like when you go back and you think about stuff, often you have insights. You'll have, I see how this worked or how that didn't work. And you kind of try to take the learning from it. And I thought of that as being like, yeah, that's the way we're supposed to do it. So this message really caught me. And like, I feel like I said, like, it's kind of like killing the sacred cows. It's like, this is like blasphemous in a way into the school of knowledge. It is. So I was having a hard time with it, but the more I sat with it, the more I realized, wow, this is a revolutionary way of thinking about what it is to be human. Like this, I think, is a big part of this shift in consciousness that we're trying to get into. And it is a 180 turn from how we do it now, like from all the things we're taught about how we're meant to be, how we're meant to learn about ourselves. Like, I mean, everything from like in spiritual circles, it's always like journal. We got a journal about that. Here's a journal prompt. Like, yeah, that's how we do it. And I mean, and not to say that journaling isn't good or that going back and looking at the statistics of how things have worked isn't good, because those we can actually live in the present moment. We can journal in the present moment and breathe with ourselves in the present moment. But there's a lot of rehashing things. It's really funny because I was talking, and I will go through the message and I'll break it down and we'll share with you. But I was talking to Jeff, my partner, about this message on the way to the airport. I was telling him, like, yeah, this one feels really like it's rattling the cages of things that we just accept as being true. And he's like, I don't know, like, really? Do we really learn from our past? Like, look at us. Here we are at war again. Do we really learn? Like, yeah, we digest all this stuff and we talk about war, and then we go do it again. I'm like, oh, yeah. Yeah, he's got a good point there. Like, do we really? Like, is all this going back and rehashing and looking at it? Do we really learn? Is it working? Is it actually working for us? You know? So, anyway, so let's go ahead and break down the message, because the more I sit with this, the more profound it becomes. And I'll be very curious to see what you guys think about it too. And I think it's really important to see that what they're saying here, they've never said that we're supposed to throw away the mind. They've never said that analyzing doesn't have its place. But I think the place where it doesn't belong is in like what they want us to be doing. They want us to live in the present moment, and they want us to be so engaged in the present moment that we are constantly looking at the world around us and seeing it as a canvas of who we are, and looking at that canvas and saying, okay, understanding it as a reflection of our inner world, and being fully engaged in that process, and looking at every opportunity that comes up to me. If you are in a moment of peace, accepting that moment of peace, accepting it as beautiful. If you're in a moment of conflict, noticing that conflict comes from within and seeing it as a painting that's being painted from inside of you. And so to be so engaged that the learning happens in the moment, that we are able to be so present that we never get sucked into the drama, that we never get sucked into the conflict. The conflict happens and we notice it. We notice ourselves and we say, oh, wow, that's in me. All right. So I see you. I see me and you. I see this happening. How do I learn about myself right now? And then and maybe this goes in at the same time as maybe we are able to step into this as we shift into this new consciousness, which hopefully comes with the flash of light, which I'm hoping comes soon. But and for those of you who don't know about the flash of light, that we've talked about that for several weeks, you can find it in past playlists. But that idea that's supposed to come where we have a deeper empathy, where we're able to feel each other's feelings. So maybe this new way, I think it's all together, like it's all part of the same package, where imagine a world where we are so connected, so aligned, and so aware, so self-aware and so aware, that we are able to engage with one another, feel each other's feelings, that like we would be able to encounter each other and feel like you would know what I was feeling, I would know what you were feeling. And then if something was showing up that was a conflict between us, I would be able to look at that in a really conscious way, not get sucked into drama, not get sucked into anger, but to say, oh, wow, I noticed that this is not what I expected, or I noticed that I'm feeling triggered by this. That is showing me this about myself. Right. And it would be in this, and we'd process it right there in the moment, like we're living on the edge of the wave. We're just like, as it comes up, we deal with it and then we move on. We're not going back and journaling and rehashing and think about, well, he said this and that really ticked me off. And then I should have said that would have been such a good comeback. That's what we do. That's our processing. Our processing is we go in these mind worms where we're thinking about like, I should have said this thing, that doesn't do us any good. So, so yeah. So there is some serious depth in this message. And it's funny because when I first got it, I'm like, oh yeah, it was, yeah, the more I sit with it, the more I understand it, the deeper it goes. And I really feel like this is confrontational to how we've always been taught to succeed in the world. So, and I do think, like I said, I do think, like, imagine that you are in business or in work, in your job, and like it does make sense to try something and then to go back and then to see like how it went, you know what I mean, to get data and to understand data, and analysis has a place, because when you do that, you're just getting more information and you're experiencing that in the present moment. What doesn't make sense is this idea that we are taking an experience and then walking away from it and going deeply internal and trying to excavate what our internal experience is of that moment. And they're saying that doing that is not only coming from the perspective of how we used to be, but the moment is already past. So it's like living a half step behind. It's not really taking full advantage of who we are in the present moment. So yeah, so let's go ahead and read through it and then we can break it down. So, okay. So first paragraph, they say blessings. We are as one, all as one, in one concern for humanity and the form and shape of its arrival. We wish to bring to you now thoughts of our concern for where you're from, for the new beginnings, and what is changing from within you. So they usually, in these first one or two paragraphs, they kind of outline this is what the message is about. So here they're talking about, they're basically saying, yep, they're 100% on our side. They're deeply concerned with our journey, right, with humanity and the form and shape of our arrival in terms of our shift in consciousness. And they want to bring to us thoughts of concern about where we're from. So basically, it's like concern for how we've been living, concern for how we've been processing our experience of life, right? So where we're from, the new beginnings, what is changing from within you? How are we processing all of that? They go on to say next paragraph, you are rife, abound. Rife is like rife and abound, I think are like the similar words. It's like basically like, you have tons of this. You are rife, abound with the treasures of your own speaking, of what is words put into motion. You abound with the treasures of creating, with what is happening between the words. Your mind, it spins thoughts from memories. This is really interesting. So they're talking about, like, we always hear that thoughts create things, and that our words are super powerful. And they've given us whole messages before telling us like how powerful our words are. And so that is part of how we create. It's part of our instrument, part of our apparatus, our physical body, our thoughts, right? The emotions that we generate. And of course, our words are incredibly, incredibly powerful. So they're identifying that here, that we're actively engaged in creating our reality all the time from who we are and what we're thinking, what we're doing, what we're saying. So they say, and then notice, and they say, and what is happening between the words. That's the emotion. That's the memories that they identify here. Your mind, it spins thoughts from memories. And they call this the rubble of this consecrated moment is found a transference from the past. So they're calling it right out the bat. They say those memories, when we project them into the future, are rubble, right? They're like nothing you can build with, right? That rubble is like, it's like that cast off that's on the side of the road, that it's irregular. It's not, it's not good building material. Rubble isn't good building material. And they say it's of the consecrated moment, where the treasure is in the moment, not in the memories. So they say your mind, it spins thoughts from memories. This is what we're creating from. We're creating from our memories, right? The rubble, which it creates rubble in the consecrated moment, and it's a transference from the past. So we're dragging all this past junk into our present moment, right? And they say woes from long ago become certain and rise again. So this is how we're taking all those memories, we're dredging them out. Those are the memories that are between our words, and they're taking form and rising again in the new moment. We're just recreating what we experienced already. They go on, next paragraph. They say, we speak unto you now of the thoughts you perform. So our thoughts are like a thing, like a creative force that we create. The thoughts you perform, of the words that are made, of the interplay and exchange between yourself and all that is said. So they're really referencing the fact that the words create from within us. What does concern us now is the leakage of a certain time frame of memory which permeates yourself. So, and they say the time frame of what was just before, the memories of a certain time and stance of operating, which stays within the body far too long. So by this, they mean like what we just experienced. And that could be like 5 minutes ago. It could be yesterday or a week ago, but it's like our recent experience is what they're talking about. And they're saying that we don't have an experience. Like, imagine a situation where you are so in the now that every new experience, you are just in it, like totally immersed in it. And what we do now is we spend a part of the time immersed, but then a lot of the time we're somewhere else. Like, imagine where the moment of the existing moment literally just moved through you and out of you and was done. And then you're living the next moment and the next moment. And imagine never going back and rehashing those old moments, which is a crazy thought to us because we think that's how we digest. That's how we learn. And they're saying, no, it's not, which is like crazy talk, but it makes a ton of sense. And just stay with me. Like, I know this is violating a lot of how we've been taught, but what they're saying makes so much sense. So they're calling this a leakage of this time frame of the like things that we just experienced, things that we've just been in, like yesterday, 5 minutes ago, last week, whatever, memories of a certain time and stance of operating, which stays within the body far too long. Okay, why is that? Then they go on to say, there is an existence within yourself where you are living half step behind the current now, where you live within the envelope of what was just before now. So every time we go back and we're rehashing in our mind and we're processing, like, like, why didn't my kids unload the dishwasher this morning? And you're processing whatever it is that's on your mind, that's bugging you, that you're stewing about or worrying about or giddy about, whatever it is, right? You're living in a moment that happened already. That's a half step behind, right? And then they say where you live within the envelope of what was just before now. The thoughts, the preamble, the foreshadowing, the moment ago, all entangled into one voice. So it's like we literally have everything, all of those moments. We're kind of like living a little bit in the now, a little bit in what just happened, a little bit in what we think will happen. And it's all entangled in one big mess, is what they're telling us. Yeah. So all entangled in one voice. The leakage of what was permeates the now and leads into the foreground, the comparison of which is held in consternation against the current circumstances. So they're saying you are trying super hard to evolve, but we keep projecting what was into the new moment. So we have this opportunity to treat each moment as fresh, to become something new in the next moment. It's right there, right? We could be the next person who we're meant to be the next moment from now. But instead, we just keep dredging up who we were yesterday. And we just become that again. And that's what we're doing. And they're saying, stop doing that. Yeah, it's so okay. So let's keep going because I know this takes unpacking. All right. They go on, next paragraph, they say, we wish for you to acknowledge within yourself the degree to which you linger in the time that just was. How much of the advancement of your knowing is held within that time frame? So in other words, how much do you try to learn about yourself? How much do you feel like you progress by dissecting things that just happened or things that happened a while ago, right? Or how much of that time is just spent in spinning in negative thought forms, right? So it's a really important thing to ask ourselves. Like, how often do you have those incredibly deep insights from doing that? So, and how often do we just spin and spin and spin? All right. They say to become aware of the self and how the aspect to be in has been curated to linger in what was before, right? So that's how we've been taught to be. They go on to say, we wish for yourself an announcement to be made from within the heart. So this is how we learn to live in the moment. It always has to come from the heart because the heart is how we are able to process the living in the moment fast enough to be in it. And this is to go off message here for a second, two old messages. This is super important in terms of our understanding of how the heck do we do this? That in the moment, we are like the degree of information that comes to us in the current moment is enormous, right? Like to the point where we block it out. Like you have sight, smell, taste, touch, all these things. And so you usually kind of shut down most of the sense of your senses and just kind of focus on a few things. When you look at a scene, you tend to just notice one thing. You look at one thing at a time. We're filtering out because it's so overwhelming how much information there is in the moment. So how are we meant to do all of that, to perceive all of that? And at the same time, like somehow process it and learn from it in the moment. And they say the key is to do it from the heart. And the reason for this is that the heart is incredibly fast, much faster than the head. So how we do it is by feeling into the moment. Do you feel good? Do you feel bad? You know it instantaneously. What is your reaction when someone says something to you that's unkind? The feeling is you don't have to process it. You don't have to walk away. It is instant. I feel, and maybe you can't identify the feeling, right? If you're out of touch with your emotions, if you're really in your head, and I know what that's like, because that was me for the first half of my life, that I would be like, I feel off. What is that feeling? I don't know. And then I'd have to get into my head to try to figure it out, But the way we're meant to, as we connect and get into our heart, the state of being that we're moving into is one where we will have an interaction and we will have the feeling of, wow, I don't feel good about that conversation, right? I don't feel good about what that person just said. And you can be present in the moment and process it in the moment by then feeling into what the other person is feeling and having the awareness grow between you of, wow, I am reflecting this into this moment. And I think there's so much learning to be done there that can be processed as it happens, as opposed to walking away and spinning and spinning and spinning, which is what we do now. So, okay. So they want us to acknowledge that we have this, we're doing this. How much advancement of your knowing is held within that time frame? They're saying not very much. To say to become aware of the self and how the aspect to be in has been curated to linger in what was before. Next paragraph. We wish for yourself an announcement to be made from within your heart, and that is that idea that the heart is fast, much faster at discerning things than the head, within the structure of your very being, a new method and way of living to advance the self forward, projecting from the now forward, not behind. It is as though the self takes a stance of difference, as though the self is currently lingering languidly backward, laying upon the remains of the time that just was. So they want us to say, in the next moment, I am different from who I am right now, as though we're leaning into it, trying to separate from the person we were 5 seconds ago, right? And they're saying right now, we're leaning back into that languid, like that whole idea, like what, like leaning into it, just like backwards, laying upon the remains of the time that just was, leaning back against the happenings and letting them pull through into the now, what comes through you. That's what we're doing, is we're allowing those past thoughts, past who we used to be, to recreate in the moment. Then they go on to say, we wish for the self to divest from what was, to separate the self from the experience just before, to let it move into view, to assume the rationale of one who can experience and let go of what is happening, can let it pass through you, can take on no umbrage, no residual lack of understanding, no curiosity for the unknown, to let it be, to let it move freely through and from you. So it is that really that idea of moment by moment by moment, we are recreating ourselves, living on the crest of a wave, leaning into our experience, recognizing that whatever we experienced 5 minutes ago is no longer relevant because we have been changed by the last moment. So it's like we're constantly trying to get the most understanding of ourself from the next experience, and trying to rather than leaning back and spending all of our energy processing from, and think about this, we have a finite amount of time and a finite amount of experience. And all the time that we are spending leaning back into things that used to be, we could be leaning into the future and spending that energy processing from what's in front of us right now. And if you just think about it like that, if you just say, okay, every experience I have, I'm going to spend 1 second with instead of 5 minutes with, how much longer is your life, right? Every moment, you end up having a lot more moments that you're present for. If you're only present for 1 second out of every 5 minutes, and all of a sudden you start being present for every second, your engagement, your opportunity to grow in life expands exponentially, even if you're not getting every single kernel out of every single moment, even if you're just getting some of it. But because you're leaning forward into who you are now, right? And trying to expand and experience yourself and see the world in front of you as a reflection of who you are always, right? And trying to feel with your heart what you feel in every moment. Like that's how we expand. They're saying exponentially. That's saying how we grow way, way faster. And I know it's really hard to understand how to do it, but they're saying, imagine ourselves in this paragraph. They're saying, imagine ourselves that we separate the self from the experience just before. So we just let go of it. Like whatever just happened, we literally let go of it. Let it move into view, right? To assume the rationale of one who can experience and let go of what is happening. So you fully experience the moment and then you let it pass through you, right? And then you take on no umbrage. In other words, like if you were upset about something, that's the spinning. Umbrage is like where you're like ticked off about something, right? And you're doing the spin. And then, or no residual lack of understanding. So there's nothing you're like, oh, well, I really got to go spend time with that and process that and think about that, right? That you no curiosity for the unknown. Like, what could that person have meant? What did they say? Whatever it is, right? To let it be, to let it move freely through and from you, and to try to experience it. But I mean, I recognize that this takes a degree of presence that we might not yet have all the way, that we might only be able to do this in moments, that this might be something we have to practice at doing. And then as we grow, as we move into the heart, as our heart expands, as we're able to lead from our heart, it's like these are like it's like a dance, right? Two things we got to learn to do. And you kind of got to do both, right? You kind of got to learn to navigate from the heart, and we got to have the sort of telepathy where we're feeling each other's feelings, or the emotional telepathy, the empathy. And we got to have this piece, which is that we are leaning into the now and letting each moment just move past us. So it's like, really, it's three skills, three big skills that they've identified. These are the ways we need to change for this shift in consciousness, which is, it's huge. And they've kind of been going through this, all these past messages, they kind of give us a piece and then another piece and another piece, right? And all three have to be present. Right. It is right. It's that telepathic or empathy, so that we are feeling and understanding a lot more about the moment. They've even said that we will have a sixth sense, and that sixth sense, and oh gosh, I just realized this as we're talking about it. They have a whole message that they gave us a couple weeks back, talking about how when we go through the shift in consciousness, it is like a sixth sense will open up, and that sixth sense will be so much more powerful. It will give us so much more information that the other five senses become less important. That it is like, well, think about it this way, that a lot of people, like I know I am more reliant on my eyes than I am on my sense of touch, because as I navigate the world, I can get a lot more information from my eyes than I can from my sense of touch. So I defer to my eyes. But imagine if you had a sense that was even more helpful than vision, that brought you to, so like you, rather than getting like 1x of understanding with your eyes, you got 5x by using this other sixth sense. And that's what they're describing that we are going to have. So if we have that added perception in the moment, oh my gosh. So, okay, so I'm just getting like, I'm sure they're just pouring this into my brain as we're talking about it, because it's coming in fast and furious. So, okay, so imagine that we can understand way more in the current moment. And what this reminds me of is, I remember I almost drowned once when I was on a rafting expedition. I got thrown from the raft. I got thrown into the space behind a rock where the water comes around, and it's like a waterfall underwater. And that water just pushed me, it pushed me down to the bottom of the river. And I couldn't get out. I was stuck, right? And the force was intense. I could pull my wetsuit booties, like literally sucked them right off my feet. It was so powerful. And when I was down there, I thought I was going to die. And my body was so filled with adrenaline that it slowed down time, that it felt like every moment was going by. Like I could see, I could see like 10 seconds for every second. And I learned later that that is an actual thing that happens. That when you are under incredible duress, what adrenaline will do is that it increases the number of picture frames that goes through your mind or through your eyes that you can perceive. So, and it takes a lot more brain power to do it. So your brain doesn't do it all the time. Normally it takes like a frame rate, let's call it 1x, where you see one frame per second. Think of it as like a like an old movie with the frames, the pictures that go through. And imagine that we are at, like one frame per second is going through, and that's how we perceive the world. But when we are in incredible danger, that frame rate speeds up rapidly. So we can see in would be like HD video, like super in-depth clarity, because all of a sudden we're getting 5 frames per second. So we can get way more, because we can see more clearly with more depth. So we get more information out of every second. And that actually happens. I experienced it, and it was crazy how the moment slowed down, and I felt like I had an enormous amount of time to think about, like, how can I get out of this mess? And I did, and that's a whole nother story. But that, I think, is what it's going to be like when we have this sixth sense, that we will get more information out of every moment. So living in the moment and processing our reality, it may sound really hard for us to imagine that now, but imagine if all these things come online at once. If we have the sixth sense, if we have the empathy, the telepathic empathy, right? If all of these things are coming together at the same time, then wow, this is what it's like to move into the ascension. This is what it's like to move into this shift in consciousness. So, and then it makes sense that we want to live in the moment, that we don't want to be spending all our time processing things the way we've been taught to do. Yeah. Wow. 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 Wow, you guys. This is like I hope this is making sense to you guys. It's making sense to me. I'm like, I know that like maybe we can't do this all the time right now, but maybe we can do it a little bit. Maybe we can do it some of the time, and then we can try to do it like training wheels. We have training wheels right now. They're telling us this is how you do it. So All right, they go on to say to lean into the next paragraph, to lean into the new now and the next beyond moment, a half step forward, anchoring your mind into the wave of the oncoming and the ongoing, into the next now, letting the self stay a half step endowment upon the crescent of the wave, just off the shore of your next creation. So think about, as you think about leaning into your future, leaning into the next moment, think about how when we walk, the way that we walk is we fall forward. That's what walking is. Walking is standing is balanced. And the only way to move from a balanced state is to fall forward and have your foot in front of you to catch you. And that is literally what walking is. It is falling forward and catching yourself with your foot. So that concept of leaning forward, leaning in, it's literally like walking. It's like we have to fall forward into the next moment all the time. And it's like living in that half step of just the anticipation. And what that does, I think, is it brings us to consciousness. It brings our awareness out to engage with what's rising up to meet us. Just like your foot reaches out to reach to touch the floor that's rising up to meet you as you're falling towards it, right? It's the same idea. So they go on to say, letting yourself stay a half step endowment upon the crescent of the wave just off the shore of your next creation, to feel the self ambulating forward as though you are endowed with the presence of mind to perceive the new, an enchantment waiting, that you may simply be to encourage and experience the new now to come forward. Next paragraph. The template of your offering, of your way of being, has been to linger, to last beyond the now, to stay within the time frame of the just was. To stay there, a lengthy parameter engages you now as though the mind is scattered among the remains of the new day that just was, taking apart and remembering each time frame and moment as though distilled once, it will separate new meaning, as though you can find yourself in between the moments of digestion of the time that is past. Think about that, right? Even the way they say it, that idea that we can find ourselves by digesting the past over and over and over again. And they're saying we are not there. We are in the future, that we have changed from that moment. So we are going back and shifting through the rubble of a thing that's no longer present, trying to figure out who we are, but we are not that anymore. Every moment we are changing. And if we spend all of our time trying to understand ourselves based on who we were before, we are totally missing all the growth we've done since then, right? That we are not creating from who we are in the present moment. I love how they describe it, that it's scattered, like their mind is scattered through the remains of the day. It's like taking apart. And it really, I feel, as they're saying that, I feel what it's like when we are stuck in thinking about the past, when we're stuck in that hyper analysis, when we're really in our heads. It's just that scattered thoughts, right? Yeah. And then trying to separate, trying to sift through it, trying to find or trying to make meaning out of things that have already happened. Yeah. And that is a crazy thing too, to think about how we make meaning. Think about how we are so obsessed with history in our culture. And history is one person's truth. That history gets remade and remade. Like in Russia, they just keep tearing down the old statues. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, that history, that didn't happen. China's like, hey, we're going to just erase that whole thing. And now we're going to pretend it never happened. So it's a common thing. And I'm not just naming those countries. It happens all over the place. It happens in the US, where we have who gets to determine the truth of the history. And then we take those history books and we pull them up, and some of those history books we laugh at now because they're so crazy. Our own history books, the way that they interpret things is so one-sided. It's so biased and excludes like massive portions of the population. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't make any sense, but it was one person's truth. And that is that person going back and processing the moment to create history, which we think is valuable, except that it's just one person's truth, right? It is just one person's perspective, and it's not who we are today. So is that even valuable, right? Does it make sense? If we got to learn from our mistakes, well, whose mistake, right? Who processed it? Who described it, right? What is the slant of that story that we're being taught? Like the truth is in the moment. The truth is what we're experiencing right now. So yeah, the more I go into this, the more layers seem to come up for me. I'd be just so curious. I cannot wait to see what you guys think of this, because I do feel like the more I think about it, the deeper it goes. And I know we can't do it yet. Like I know, I mean, maybe you can. For me, it's gonna be a struggle to try to do this, you know. But I know that we're growing. I know that we're growing really, really fast. And I think the more I try to do it, the more I'll be able to do it. Yeah. Um, so okay, they go on to say next paragraph, we say you cannot now. Oh my gosh, I love this part. So here they're describing us, like shifting through the rubble, trying to find truth about who we are by digesting moments that are already done. It's like trying to digest stuff. It's all dried up and desiccated and there's no life in it anymore. And we're trying to digest that to discover who we are. And they say, the next paragraph, they say, we say you cannot now or ever find yourself there. How definitive is that? You are made of stardust, and starlight waits for no one. Starlight shines its brightest upon the new morn. It makes its presence known and dissipates instantly. Its shades are brighter upon first perception. This is what you are. Like, wow, right? I love, love, love that paragraph because it's true. Like we exist, our awareness, our consciousness, we are light. And our consciousness, our presence exists in the now moment. And where we are powerful, like we are just like light. When you turn light on, when a light wave moves to you, you experience it, boom, right now in the moment, and then it's gone. It's past, it's finished, right? Light isn't like, a physical object. It's light, it's a wave, it moves, and we are that. Our consciousness, our awareness is just like light. And they're saying, yeah, you are made of stardust, and starlight waits for no one. Wow, it's so beautiful. Starlight shines its brightest upon the new moon in the moment. They're saying in the moment is when you shine the brightest. It makes its presence known and dissipates instantly. So you, in the next moment, you are shining your light and boom, it's done, right? It dissipates. Wow, that version of you is never going to exist again. Yeah. They go on to say the instance of your own happening is most powerfully known by living in the present moment where you are, by letting the self be leaning inward, forward, and through to the new now, the next now. In this habitude worth forming, you will discover what you are in new ways. You will see the endowment of these times as forming around yourself, dignifying your gentler properties, examining yourself in the tundra of experience as though you are painting yourself into form, creating within the field of observation and experience. I love this description of what it's going to be like, right? They're saying that it's literally like we'll be leaning into the moment, and we will have this greater perception, right? This deeper sixth sense that's going to allow us to get a lot more information out of the moment. We will have this ability to perceive so much about other people because we will have our our uh, our psychic empathy, right? And so with those gifts, right, we will see the endowment of these times as forming around yourself, dignifying your gentler properties. So we will see the moment reflecting us back to ourselves, to see ourselves, both the beautiful things, right, our gentler properties, like the beautiful things we are, and then also some of the hard things that we are. We'll see it all. Examining yourself in the tundra of experience. So it's like this think of the tundra as like the wide open space, right? Of experience, as though you are painting yourself into form. So the tundra, imagine, I think a tundra as being like a big open wide space, and you are painting yourself out onto this vast landscape of opportunity, right? And creating from it what you are. Yeah. Creating within the field of observation and experience, and seeing this is the canvas upon which you can draw conclusion. Oh my gosh, right? How cool. I did like that right there. This is the canvas. I thought they were just going to stop. This is the canvas upon which you draw. No, they're so clever. This is the canvas upon which you draw conclusion. So in other words, in the moment is where we draw our conclusions. In that the minute we paint ourselves, we experience our reality, and in that moment we draw conclusions about who we are because we perceive it through our heart. We have an emotional response to our reality, and it teaches us about ourselves, right? Not the practice, they say, not the practice of resuscitating what was an enduring and endless tirade of thoughtful concern about how you have been, about what was said and passed through your mind, as though all can be discovered through greater analysis. Greater depth of meaning can be found after, right? That's how we are right now. And they go on to say, it cannot be but the re-understanding of an understanding that was made in the moment of time of experience. So in other words, they're saying any great insights we have through the process of churning and through our thoughts is an understanding that we had in the moment anyways, right? What we are doing is trying to process I'm just getting this now as we're talking about it. We are trying to process our feelings, and our feelings happened at the moment, right? So they're saying it cannot be but the re-understanding of an understanding. It can't be but the re-feeling of a feeling that was made in the moment at the time of experience, right? They go on to say, we say you have been trained and thought of as being a species who must reflect. And that, I cannot tell you how true that is for me. And maybe it is for you guys too. Like, I've always been taught, like, this is how we learn. This is how we get better. This is how we process, right? This is how we improve, is by reflecting. And they're saying, yep, this is what we've been taught. They say that we must reflect, ponder, re-understand themselves through the action of redetermination posthumously, which is like after death, of every moment and encounter, as though the day must pass not twice, but 5 times through your mind for better understanding. And they are funny, and they know they're joking with us, but they're trying to make a point here, which I take for sure. We're trying to re-understand ourselves after the death of every moment, trying to go back to that moment and relive it 5 times. Yeah. And then we're just, at the end of it, we're just going to get the information, which is the feelings that we had in the moment, right? And then they go on to say, we say that you cannot but endow the time spent with more riddles of understanding from the perspective of who you were then, letting yourself dawdle in a time frame that just was. So it's really like we're living in who we used to be. When we do that, that we're not taking advantage of the growth that we're making, that we're not being ourselves in the present moment, that we're working through and rehashing and going back to who we were when that happened. Yeah. And so here's an interesting proof of that point. This is interesting. So we are capable of taking on a frame of mind of who we were like years ago. So think about this. If you are ever, like, say you are in your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s, and you go back to like a high school reunion and you're around all those people from high school, and do you notice, have you ever noticed how everybody goes back to being with each other in ways that were similar to high school? It's almost like they slip back, and or family people, like family groups. If you go back, if you don't see your family very often, and then you go back and you hang out with your parents and you find that you're acting like your teenage self again. And so we step back into these old ways of being, these old people that we used to be. And we are super capable, so say, for example, with what brain science, scientists who study our thoughts and how the brain works, they have found that if you think about a thing, then it is as though you are living that thing right now. So in other words, if you think about watching a funny movie, it will release the same good feelings, the same good hormones that you release when you are in that movie, when you're laughing at the movie, just like it was. So, or if you think about, so your body anticipates, if you think about running and you go through the experience of running, your body starts to produce the hormones and the experience of running internally. So you can actually think your way to fitness, I think, if you are willing to sit there and think through what it is to like swim, a triathlon or whatever. It's probably good for you. But the point being, and it's probably not to the same degree, but it's a degree of it, is a measurable degree that we create what we're thinking about as if it's happening right now. So if we are recreating the past, if we're really stuck on processing stuff that we've been through already, then that's what we're creating in the body. That is the lived experience that we are having. We are literally projecting ourselves back to that moment, and we're living as we used to be, even our sense of ourself, all of it, just like it does, like when you go back to your high school reunion and you're back in that time frame. So think about that. Yeah, that we're letting ourselves dawdle in the time frame that just was. There is no understanding to be had that cannot be gleaned much better in the new now. all that presents itself upon the crescent of the wave that is coming is fresh to be revealed. It is the new and the next instantiation of what you are. What you have been recedes into the background, into the beyond measures of comprehending, and you become something new. This instantiation is being revealed before you now, to be revealed to yourself in a time frame of momentary pleasure, moment upon moment. Yeah, and I'm just thinking about how much growth we can have if we are getting so much more out of our experience of living because we're living in the moment and experiencing so much more of it, right? That the growth, if every moment is rising up to show us our new self, and if we're processing instantaneously, and rather than spinning and spending a third or a fourth or more, like half of our time thinking about what used to be, thinking about the last moment or the next moment or whatever, right? Where we're not in the present. They go on to say, in the understanding of what is revealed, you find yourself played out more clear, with more rightful attunement than any processing you can do later. Thus, we urgently advise you to reconsider the template which has been ingrained societally, educationally, and in all aspects of human culture, that to take on an aspect of residual contemplation of where you've been perpetuates into the new now what was, and prevents yourself from the growth that can be captured in the moment, in the next now, to which you are enabled. So I think this is just very clearly and beautifully said, right? That if we're stuck in residual contemplation, so contemplating the leftovers, right? Whatever was from the sort of the dried up husk of the last moments that we are reliving over and over and over again, contemplating that, right? Of where you've been. And that what that does is perpetuates that moment because we're experiencing it as if it's real. So our whole psyche, our soul goes back to that moment. And we are bringing that into our current moment. So we're discounting all the beauty that we're creating in front of us. And we're just creating more of who we were back when we had that moment, right? We're missing out on the growth of all those moments we spend thinking about how we used to be or what used to happen or what did happen. Yeah. And they go on to say, next paragraph, you cannot now understand the full limits of your capacity if you dawdle in what is past. So they're saying this is a major and significant hindrance to our growth. This thing that we do, that we have been taught is the way to do it, right? That they're saying, nope, it's not the way to do it. It is actually exactly against your purpose, that it is exactly a thing that is slowing you down. Doesn't mean we can't grow, because we grow. But they're saying you'll grow way faster this other way. You cannot now field your comprehension into the uncertainty of your own growth if you exhaust yourself with the conundrums and puzzles of what was before. There, the circumstances have lapsed. The time frames have closed. All that was is no longer. It is as though you dust the roses that have died, trying to find their bloom again. Ah, it's poetry. It is so like they're not mincing any words. I mean, it's powerful visuals that they're giving us here. They're really trying, and I think part of the reason they're coming out with guns blaring on this one, trying to really help us get it, is because it is the sacred cow. It is. To me, I was like, this is when I first got this, I'm like I said, it took me a while to accept it. And then now I am like drinking the Kool-Aid big time. I really like this message a lot. I'll be very curious to see what you guys think. If you like it, if you hate it, I'll be very curious to see how you feel about it. Cause I feel like this is really like it's not easy to do, and we don't know how to do it yet. So I think that's part of it. And I think if we understand that, and they're not saying that the mind has no place, but the mind is meant to support the heart. And if we are living in the past, processing a moment that happened before, we are leading with our head, not with our heart. The heart only lives in the current moment. Yeah. We take you by the hand and lead you gently to the surface of reveal, where you are understood. It is at the closure of the mind to open again. I love this. So here they're saying, so we lead you to the surface of reveal, where you are understood. It is at the closure of the mind to open again. So they're saying the place we need to go to is first to look at how our minds are closed to this whole concept, right? The closure of a mind, how our minds are closed, to open it again and to look at this and to see this as a possibility for us, to find the light of the day and dawn, to reveal the reveal of what is before you, to surf the edge, drawn into form, to see yourself painted a picture, to see what you are brought into form as though it were from within you. This great digestion of material takes place in the present and nowhere else. You must be in this aspect to oneself to grow to your greatest purchase on this earth. Yeah. Wow, you guys. Like super, super cool message. I love how this message fits with all the other ones. I see how they've been giving us one piece at a time, one piece at a time. Like if this is your first message you've listened to, definitely go back and listen to the other ones. They've been talking about this. I think it's probably been in the last 6 months. But it's, I mean, it's really ever since I started channeling them, they've always been talking about the shift, always. So it's just like, where do you start? All the message are valuable. I am going to put all the messages into a book form for you guys. So I'm working on that. It's just, there's a lot of material. So there's a lot to go through, but it's in process. I'm starting that now. And so that'll hopefully make it easier for you guys to kind of, it'll be grouped by category and by topic area and year. So you can hopefully kind of process this stuff more quickly. So anyways, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. Do let me know what you think about this idea. And do you feel this is possible for you? Have you tried, can you try to do it? Can you try it and then report back and see what you feel? You know, what is it like? And how long? I mean, I feel like this is going to take a lot of mental energy to do this, it's going to take a lot of, at least I feel like it. Maybe in the long run, it'll take a lot less, but I don't know. Maybe it'll be tiring. I'll be very, very curious to hear what your experience is and what your thoughts are about it. All right. Have a great, great weekend, you guys. Sending you lots of love. And I'll see you next Friday live.